Welcome back to the Handover of Macau video series, part 2. In part 1, we talked a little bit about the history of the Portuguese in Macau from 1500 to roughly around 1887, when Portugal and China would enter into a treaty acknowledging Portugal's perpetual administration over Macau. However, that treaty was signed by the Qing dynasty, and the Qing dynasty would later fall and be replaced by the ROC. So we're going to pick up from there with the Republic of China. The Republic of China was established in the 1911 Xinhai Revolution, and from the 1920s onwards, the ruling party embarked upon recovering the territories that the Qing had lost over the years. They used the combination of international diplomacy as well as domestic pressure to recover foreign concessions from countries like the United Kingdom, France, and Russia. The full detail of this recovery movement is pretty interesting and is worth exploring in a later video, but with regards to Macau, what you need to know is that in 1928, they would kind of kick the question down further. They would renew the 1887 treaty, which acknowledged the perpetual Portuguese administration, but at the same time, it seemed like that administration would end sooner rather than later. After World War II, Chiang Kai-shek requested full territorial rights over Macau, and a tense meeting was held in 1947 that acknowledged the give-and-take nature of those negotiations. Portugal again evaded resolution of the sovereignty question, in part because Chiang and the ROC had bigger fish to fry. A fish named the Chinese Communist Party, except in this case, the fish fried them. In 1949, the People's Republic of China was established, and immediately relations between itself and Portugal went ice cold. Portugal at the time had been under the rule of an authoritarian new state regime, and its prime minister, Antonio Salazar, was a fervent anti-communist. Communist China, in turn, decided to put the Macau and Hong Kong question aside as it dealt with domestic issues and receiving international recognition. The truth was that China knew it held all the cards and could manipulate Macau and its veneer of foreign control for its own needs. For example, during the Korean War, the United Kingdom placed a blockade on Hong Kong, a highly risky but necessary tactic to punish China for its participation against the Allies. Macau played a crucial role in breaking this blockade so that China could get Western-style military weapons to use against the West itself. Then the Cultural Revolution started, and things really got going. Nationwide, social unrest spilled out everywhere, and it went across the borders into both Hong Kong and Macau. Hong Kong's 1967 riots presented one of the greatest challenges to British rule, but they responded with a crackdown that would eventually contain the damage. Across the bay in Macau, however, things went differently. In December 1966, public demonstrations broke out over the construction ban of a pro-Beijing school. The Macau administration tried to get things under control, but in the ensuing riots and violence, 8 Chinese were killed and 212 were injured. Beijing and local leftist officials demanded compensation and the punishment of the officials responsible. It was a bad, bad situation. The 123 incident, as it was called, named because it started on December 3rd, ended in a humiliating public apology from Portugal and an influential secret agreement. In it, Portugal set strict limits on its governorship and increased the powers of the local officials. This was the moment of the actual handover. Here, Portugal recognized for real and on paper that China had sovereignty over Macau, and there was no ambiguity about it. Macau had been handed over. The only question was when the flags would switch. The curious thing, though, is that flag switching would happen some 30 years later after this acknowledgement. The question is, why wait? And that's what we're going to look at in part 3 and the final part of our Macau Handover video series. Thanks, and hope you watch the third part.